Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm going to start with a brief intro because it's relevant to this topic. My name's Megan. I'm a recovering addict. I've been in recovery since 2008. That's when my journey started. But my recovery journey has not followed the typical abstinence-based 12 steps approach. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I have chosen to go a different route. I am a patient in medication-assisted treatment, also known as MAT. I'm prescribed Suboxone, which is a maintenance medication for opioid use disorder. And on top of that, I participate in psychosocial therapy, which is like CBT and other things. And I feel really good in my recovery. I'm very happy with the progress I've made. I've worked very hard, and I attribute a lot of that to Suboxone and MAT. Now, MAT is a three-pronged approach to treatment. It's the gold standard per the Surgeon General, and it is medication, psychosocial therapy / behavioral therapies, and community-based recovery support services. That's things like job training, education, daycare, financial assistance, housing assistance, etc. So we know that this approach works. This is a evidence-based approach, and it has kind of evolved over the years. So when Suboxone first came on the scene, it was prescribed differently. It was in rehabs, like inpatient facilities for short term, for a detox. And over the years, it's kind of evolved into a long-term treatment option that you can do in an outpatient facility, which is great. It makes it so much more accessible for so many people. There's so many people that just can't take off work to go to rehab. They'll lose their job. Who's gonna watch their kids? They have to pay their bills. Myself included, I couldn't have done that. So Pennsylvania is pushing this bill. It's the Senate Bill number 675, and it is about buprenorphine medication-assisted treatment. They're trying to regulate it a little bit more beyond the regulations, which are already a lot. So Pennsylvania is angling it so that it looks like it's to make sure that the doctors are certified and trained properly in providing the proper therapy and, but really it's about money. It's all about money, and I will explain why. But this is going to be one of many videos about this topic. I also want to break down some of their misconceptions that they're like holding on to as like the reason for this bill, like why this bill is so important. Mostly it's going to be about like the diversion of Suboxone, which is taking your prescription and selling it illegally. And that is an issue. Like, that's a problem, but I think it's an issue for reasons different than what they think. So the diversion of Suboxone is one thing. I'm going to talk about when to know if you're ready to get off of Suboxone. When should you start tapering? Like, what should be going on in your life that you can begin tapering? And it's important not to do it too soon. And research shows that long-term treatment also results in lower risk of relapse and decreased overdoses. It's not bad to be on it long-term, and I'll get into that. But other things I want to talk about are the evolution of Suboxone treatment, how it was then, how it is now, and why that's changed. And I would like to talk about the lawsuits against Suboxone and other opioid manufacturers, and why comparing them is not good. It's not apples to apples. Like, yes, they're both opioids, and yes, they do have a lot of similar properties, but they are very different in a lot of ways. But I'll get into those videos later. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the bill and talk about the testimonies that they had at their hearing. I'm going to break down what I don't agree with, what is inaccurate. Yeah, I'm really upset about these testimonies. They're filled with half-truths. That's the best way to explain it, because they're not lying outright, but they're lying by omission. They are lying through misinformation, and it's frustrating because these testimonies are in front of senators who might not have access to this research, who might not have researched it prior. So this is their first impression, and they believe they're getting this information from a professional, and it's only half true. That's disappointing. It's hard enough to change someone's mind once you've already taught them something. It's especially hard to change someone's mind about a controversial topic like addiction. Controversial, that sounded funny. But anyway, before I go further, please subscribe to my channel. Turn the bell notification on so that you can get updates when I post these other videos, because they're coming. They're coming soon. And like this video, share it. Share it, share it, share it. And if you live in Pennsylvania, this is your call to action. I need your help. I need you to reach out to the representatives, to the senators. Like, we have to spread this message. This is important. Okay, so bill number 675. It is mostly about the certification and training that doctors have to go through in order to be able to prescribe Suboxone. As it is right now, doctors need to take an 8-hour course online in order to be certified. It is regulated. The DEA definitely has a lot of regulations and stipulations in place for the prescribing and treatment of MAT. But apparently Pennsylvania thinks that they can do it better. So they want to create these like training programs and special certifications, and they want the doctors to have to pay for all this stuff. And then they want the doctors to have more staff. So in the office, they also have to have the prescribing doctor, then they have to have certified and licensed therapists. And these guys have to be certified and licensed per the state's new training regulations. And that costs money too. My prescribing doctor has him and a nurse practitioner, and they run the show. They're not gonna be able to operate. My family doctor also provides MAT, and he doesn't have any therapists in-house, so he would either have to hire more people or stop providing MAT. What do you think is gonna be the option for most people? We already have counties in Pennsylvania that don't have any providers. So now you're gonna make it even harder? They're trying to make it look like it's about the safety and well-being of the patients, right? Like they want to make sure that they're getting proper treatment, and that's important. And they want to make sure that they're going through therapy, and that's also important. But really, this is a money grab. This is going to make the state a lot of money. And right now, they're angry because they're missing out on money. And residential inpatient treatment facilities, they're also not making money. Because Suboxone has kind of shifted recovery and addiction treatment to an outpatient setting, inpatient rehabs have empty beds. Like they're not booming like they used to be. Remember back in the day when you wanted to get into rehab and you had to wait like 2 weeks, 7 weeks, 3 months? Yeah, that's not the case anymore. There's lots of empty beds, and residential inpatient facilities are not happy about that. They are not up to the gold standard that the Surgeon General has for treatment of moderate to severe opioid use disorder. It's their fault that they're behind the times. It is not the outpatient facilities. And they should be happy that people don't need the inpatient, that they can get the treatment in outpatient, you know? It's better for our economy. People aren't missing out on work. People don't have to leave their families. People can pay their bills. Plus, rehab costs a lot of money. A lot of money. Like, it's insane. It's insane how much it costs. And then you're trying to tell me that you are not making enough money and your industry is dying? So what? Shift, change, adapt. Move to more outpatient facilities. Move to better programs that offer medicine long term. I'm heated. Okay, so I said it's a money grab. There's a reason I said that. It's gonna cost them $1.8 million to roll this out. And that will be offset by the $1.1 million they're expected to get back in revenue from the doctors certifying, like the certifications and training. And then they break even. And then the next year they're expected to get 1.6 million. So that would make the state a lot of money. It's kind of interesting, right? Like, are you sure it's not just about the money? Because I'm not convinced. And really, this bill is similar to like the underhanded tactics of Big Pharma. It's not focused on the well-being or health of the patients. It's about money. Big Pharma pushed doctors to prescribe more than they needed, and they completely neglected the needs and health and safety of the patients that were being overprescribed medicine. And now you're going to basically block access to a life-saving medication. Like, this medicine has saved so many lives. So many. Just taking Suboxone and being in a MAT program decreases the risk of overdose by 50%. The risk of overdosing after leaving an abstinence-based rehab facility is 80%. And if you stay on MAT, and do it long term, your risk of relapsing decreases greatly. And the longer you're on treatment, the lower that risk is. But yet we don't want that, do we? The ultimate goal of addiction treatment has always been abstinence. And I think that's part of this problem. We're hung up on this idea of abstinence. But let me think of how to say this, Yes, addiction exists because we used drugs, but what happened, like what existed in our brains prior to drug use? There are underlying factors as to why we chose to use drugs. A lot of us self-medicated. We might not have known what was wrong. Some of us do know. Like, the statistic says that 50% of people with a substance use disorder also have a co-occurring disorder that they've been diagnosed with. I honestly feel like the other 50% just hasn't been diagnosed yet. Why do we want to go back to that zero, the abstinence-based, the before drugs feeling? Because people weren't happy before drugs. There's a reason they used the drugs. I think that recovery, instead of recovery being abstinence, I think that recovery should be maintaining a level of homeostasis that is healthy and allows you to live a good and fulfilling life. And if that requires medication, oh well. What about antidepressants? We don't harp on people for being on antidepressants. We don't ask questions about when they're gonna stop or how they stop, and and you have to taper off of antidepressants as well. It's not just like you just quit and you're good. Like, you have to slowly wean off, just like Suboxone. And a lot of the research, or not research, it's not research, a lot of the testimonies and like misinformation out there says that getting off of Suboxone is harder than getting off of dope. Getting off of Suboxone or methadone is harder than getting off of pills. I'm here to say that that was not true for me. I successfully tapered off of Suboxone in 2010. At that point, I did not do any therapy with the medication, and that was my bad because I was not set up for success, and I learned that later. But as for the taper and detox process off of Suboxone, I did it with minimal withdrawal symptoms. I took a week off of work. I didn't sleep for a week. I went back to work the next week, and I was great. Actually, being busy helped. I tapered slowly, like super slow. I got down all the way down to 0.5 milligrams every other day. And I listened to my body. The people that are saying it's harder to get off of than heroin or harder to get off of than pills, they didn't do it right. They jumped too soon. Maybe they were forced off of it. Maybe they got sent to jail where we deny them this medication. We make them suffer. We make them hate the medicine. It's hard to see the benefits when you're feeling such pain from it. You know what I mean? While I do think that inpatient rehabs have a place in the recovery process, I don't think that they should be the default place or the default treatment option. I think the outpatient treatment option is great for many reasons, specifically because it doesn't disrupt the economy. You can literally go in that office, dependent on dope, dependent on pain pills that you're abusing, and within 24 hours be on maintenance medication, having no cravings, no withdrawal symptoms, not missing work, paying attention to your kids, living your life. Why are we saying that, no, that's not good? That doesn't work. We need you to go to a facility and pay $60,000 for treatment that you have a 20% success rate with. Whatever. I have notes. Like always, your girl got notes. So the first testimony was from Miss Judith Gristle or something. She's a psychology professor at Bucknell University, and her testimony was infuriating. Now, I accessed these online, and I couldn't, obviously it's nonverbal, I'm reading text. I don't know how she said things or what gestures she made or anything like that because it's not included in the testimony notes. But I think what she was implying, it speaks volumes. It's very clear. So she is in recovery herself. She prefers abstinence-based treatment. And when I say prefers, like, she thinks that's the only way to do it. She does not view medication-assisted treatment long-term as recovery. And that's not cool. Your recovery is no better than my recovery. My recovery is no better than your recovery. We are both in recovery. We should support each other. We should support our differences because we have similarities that bond us together. So the big argument was that all drugs have side effects, which is true, and the brain will adapt to drug use to maintain a level of homeostasis, or the basic level of functioning. The chronic presence of drugs in your system causes the brain to adapt and develop things like a tolerance, dependence, and craving, which are the hallmarks of addiction. Yeah, okay, that all sounds right. That's true. Now she says that recovery occurs when the brain readapts to the absence of drugs, like maintaining that level of homeostasis. Again, I got that. And this process can take a long time. It depends on a lot of factors, like how much drugs you used, what drugs you used, how you used them. All those things matter. And she says that relapses are triggered by three things: stress, a taste of any addictive substance, and environmental cues or triggers. So, yeah, that all makes sense. But then the second one is the one we're going to hang on to here. So any addictive substance in her eyes is something that adjusts the brain, that changes the way the brain functions. So Suboxone, it goes into your opioid receptors and changes your dopamine and serotonin levels. You know, we know all of this. But that doesn't mean addiction. That means dependence, you know? And as you slowly taper off of it, your brain will readjust, you know, maintaining that level of homeostasis. So in her eyes, Suboxone is an addictive drug. It's less effective or less desirable than other opioids, but it still causes changes in your neural pathways. She then goes on to assume that all addicts are like her and they will take whatever they can in order to get a high, to catch a buzz, to feel that euphoria. Let's just keep in mind though that anecdotal evidence is not data. So she's going off of her own experiences here and then making generalizations for everyone. And she even admits in this testimony that she was not an opioid addict. So she does not have any experience with this. She does not have any personal experience with medication-assisted treatment. She does not know how Suboxone feels versus Oxycontin, or how Suboxone feels versus methadone, or how Suboxone feels versus heroin. She doesn't know. So she is equating them all as the same. And I don't think that's accurate. So she's saying that regular use of Suboxone, aka long-term treatment, leads to tolerance, dependence, and cravings, and that means it's addictive. That's just not true. It's just not true. Like there is a small percentage of the population who are opioid naive people, means they don't have any dependence to opioids, and they will take Suboxone to get high. That exists. That fully exists. I know that. Some of my subscribers have admitted to that, and that's okay. We all have our faults. We've all made mistakes. We're obviously here together trying to find this journey of recovery together. What is frustrating is that she's just treating it as another opioid without even really knowing. Like, it is a synthetic partial opioid. We get this. It has different effects. Like, there's a ceiling effect where you can only take up until a certain dose, and anything above this dose doesn't do anything. It's awesome. She talks about how as you take more of it, you're gonna need more of it, you know, because of your tolerance, then you're gonna have to take more of it to feel the same high. You can't do that with Suboxone. Like, there is literally a level where anything above it doesn't matter. You're just wasting it. You're not gonna get more and more fucked up. And the cool thing about Suboxone is that over time, you can slowly taper off of it and not really even feel the effects of going down. You can't do that with other opioids. You can't just slowly take less and be okay. Like, you will get hit with hard cravings, like hard cravings. You will have mild to moderate discomfort when you're tapering down on Suboxone, but if you do it correctly, which is low and slow, it'll be minimal, I promise. So she says that long-term Suboxone use perpetuates the opioid addiction that it was designed to treat. So because it causes the brain to adapt, it is addictive, and that's just flawed. She is just very, very focused on abstinence-based treatment. And that's fine, that's what she prefers. More power to you, but you cannot say that yours is better or the right way or the only way. And research has shown that long-term treatment equals lower risk of overdose and lower chances of relapse. So why is that bad? Are you gonna tell someone with depression that they can't be on a depressant for long-term because you didn't need it? Like, ugh. The worst part is she said she views long-term Suboxone treatment as a scientific and ethical failing. So you know better than science? Where are your research studies that show this? Why is it unethical to have a harm reduction model? What is wrong with that? And I'll get more into this whole harm reduction thing. It's just kind of BS. Just because you found recovery without Suboxone does not mean that finding recovery with Suboxone is not valid. It is valid. My recovery is valid. Everyone's recovery on that is valid. Okay, so the second testimony was from Quinn Chipley, and he is a counseling coordinator at the University of Louisville. He talked about how the treatment goal or the practice of Suboxone prescribing has changed in the mid-2000s, whereas prior to that it was short-term tapers in an inpatient facility, and now it has shifted to the long-term individualized treatment in outpatient facilities. And this is when we took on more of a harm reduction technique. And this treats the secondary effects of addiction, like the spread of disease, the spread of HIV, hepatitis C, the prevention of bacterial infections in your soft tissue, or endocarditis, which is the bacterial infection of your heart. What he didn't mention is that other secondary effects that it treats are overdoses. and relapses. And relapses have a 60% chance of ending in an overdose these days. That's insane. Medication is a good tool to pair with other treatment options, i.e. psychosocial therapy and behavioral therapy, and community-based recovery support services. All of that together is a wonderful tool for recovery. I mean, does he think that the medication alone is what fixes addiction? Because the short-term taper that's not doing anything. You need to have all three of it, and you need to have it for a significant amount of time to really take effect. And then in his testimony, he bitched and moaned about the reliability and validity of newer research and how the sample sizes are either not accurate, not diverse enough, not for the right demographic. He said that we can't be comparing people that abuse pain pills to people that have a heroin addiction or are polydrug users. And it's like, I don't even want to get into it, because then he turned around and talked about this research study that he knew someone that conducted. So I guess this guy went into a prison in Kentucky and was talking to the inmates, and he said, oh, well, Suboxone's not supposed to be addictive. And they're like, yeah, it is. It's harder to get off of than heroin. He said, oh, well, you're not supposed to get high from it. And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll show you how. Like, so they took this anecdotal evidence and then they designed a study that would give them that as data. I don't know if that makes sense, but like they literally constructed a research study to give them the results that they wanted. So their sample size was very limited. It was inmates in a Kentucky prison. So it's probably people that were kicked out of a Suboxone program quickly, abruptly, maybe because they went to jail. It's people that have, it's just not an accurate representation of all addicts. Let's just leave it at that. Like, yes, all addicts lie and steal and do bad things, some more than others, but you cannot take a male population of prisoners in Kentucky and make that a generalized sample size. It's not possible. It's not diverse enough, it's not big enough, it's just not accurate. So how are you gonna bitch about current research and then turn around and do the same thing? It blows my mind. But anyway, so in this research study that he basically created his own confirmation bias in, his results were ridiculous. Out of the population, 13% of people said that Suboxone had helped them at least one part of their recovery journey. You know, it could have been helpful just a little bit. And then 31% of people said it did nothing good or bad. It didn't matter. And then 43% of people said it only made things worse. I bet those people ended Suboxone abruptly. I bet they were forced into detox by the judicial system. I bet they didn't taper low and slow. I bet they weren't in therapy. And then from there, he talked about how they obtained it. So only 4% of that population obtained their Suboxone from a valid prescription. 4%. Then he said 60% of the population bought it illegally. You know, they bought it, they stole it, they borrowed it, they didn't have a prescription for it. It was diverted Suboxone. And then 37% of the population sometimes had a prescription and sometimes didn't. So there's overlap in there that he doesn't really explain, but how can you not see how your sample size, your subjects, skewed the results in that way? How can you not see that? Why are you not evaluating people in that are successfully in recovery for years? Why am I not being asked about this? Like, I want to create a survey, guys, and I would like to have people's honest opinion. I want to know if you've ever taken Suboxone ever, legally or illegally. I want to see the results, and I really feel like it's going to show that most people take diverted Suboxone because they are trying to self-medicate or do some sort of like opioid maintenance program without a doctor. Maybe they can't afford it. Maybe they're only doing it while they can't get drugs, you know. Regardless, it's still not as bad as using, and that's the important thing. Like, yes, opioid naive people, aka people who are not dependent on opioids, can overdose from using Suboxone. It's possible. The risks are always going to be there. And yes, there are always going to be people that are going to abuse it. You're going to have people that are going to inject it. And that will cause bacterial infections and health complications, and that's also part of it. But we're punishing people that are in treatment or people that want to get in treatment because of the few that have done it wrong. And by charging the doctors more and making them hire more staff, you're increasing the prices of treatment. It's going to go up. Insurance only covers part of it anyway, as it is. It's just frustrating. Suboxone has its place in recovery. That is something that you cannot convince me otherwise of. I think that the issues with the diverted Suboxone, that is more of like a systemic or social issue than it is a medication issue. And the lawsuit with Suboxone and the big pharma pushing it and lying to doctors or having doctors lie to people about the risk of dependence and other things like that, that is not a reflection of the medication itself. That is a reflection of the pharmaceutical companies who are marketing it like that. That's their bad practices. The medication is still good. The medication is still saving lives. The medication is still important, and it's helping. And this bill is going to make access to treatment so much harder. So much harder. And I get that you want to regulate it. I understand that. But I don't think you're doing it for the right reasons. I think that this is a money grab, and I think that you're trying to disguise it as something that's going to help the patients or be for the patients, but it's not. This is a way to get money back in the state's pocket. And I'm pretty sure that like inpatient residential rehab facilities and the state work hand in hand. They get lots of grants and funding, and money that goes to the inpatient rehab facility is going to go back to the state and vice versa. And I think that is something important to think about, When stuff like this happens, you need to ask yourself, like, who is this affecting? Who is this helping? Where's the money going? Who's behind this? And this bill passed, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was like 39-9 or something. I don't know. It was crazy. It was crazy how many people voted for this. And it's like, by not telling the whole story, by not sharing the stories of people in recovery on that, like us, like me, like you, by not sharing these stories to the senators and giving them an accurate, fully well-rounded perspective of treatment, it's not fair. It's not fair at all. And they didn't outright lie, but they lied by omission, and that's frustrating. And I'm going to make future videos. I know I've said this already. Please keep an eye out. Please share this message. This is important. We need to fight for our right to access to treatment. It's going to be so upsetting if, so we have 5 prescribing doctors in our area, and only 2 will be valid under the state's new regulations if this bill passes. Only 2. That's crazy. Where are all those people? So each doctor can prescribe or treat 250 patients. So where are all those people going to go? We won't have enough providers. And it's like I said, my doctor does this as a side job. He rents an office and has a nurse practitioner that works with him. He doesn't even have a facility to hire people and put them in. Ugh. This isn't right. Make sure that you do your research, Don't just take what I'm saying at face value. Please look into this as well. Please do your research. I'm going to have videos coming up about diverted Suboxone, about the evolution of Suboxone treatment, about when to know you're ready to get off. And I'm excited. I think that this is an important conversation that needs to be had. I just wish it wasn't because the Senate was passing this stupid bill. Oh, no, they passed it. I wish it wasn't because the Senate passed this stupid bill. This should be dead. This should not... Okay. Sorry. Another long video. I love you guys. Thanks for sticking in. I will see you in my next video. Stay strong, stay up, stay sober.